Welcome to the Rainmaker Multiplier on Demand, a podcast for leading financial professionals, or rainmakers, and their teams that offer support for securing a successful future. From marketing help to staffing structure, listen and subscribe for actionable insights from advisors and skilled professionals alike.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Rainmaker Multiplier on Demand. Today's topic, we are going to be covering the ins and outs of branding and the importance. And I got a very special guest today, Alana Kohl, founder of AdvisorPR. Anna is a brand consultant, marketing communications strategist, and publicist, and more importantly, just all around a great person. I've had the pleasure of working with Alana for my 5 years that I've been here at C2P. It's been a pleasure, and we've been talking about doing this podcast for quite a while and are finally getting around to it. So thank you, Alana, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Matt. I'm going to add that line to my bio, and I'm an all-around great person.
There you go. You can put my stamp on that. See, we can use testimonials now. So
like Matt Seitz said.
That's right. So thank you all for tuning in today. You know, we're at the beginning of a new year here. We're into 2024 now, and many of you, either advisors, marketing professionals, business development individuals that are listening, you're working on or crafting your marketing strategy for the year, putting your finishing touches on it. But as we've talked about this, if you've been part of our coffee breaks or some of the other podcasts, that before you start diving into building and executing that marketing strategy and going in and updating your website or spending those ad dollars, the importance of focusing on your brand messaging, how you're talking about yourself, who you're talking to in terms of the consumer. And this is really where Alana and her team bring in their expertise to help, because you have to focus on that side. And one of the best ways to do that is Alana recently had an article on this about going undercover to find that side on the PR side. And some of you maybe have seen that Undercover Boss. I had some chuckles on that. I would love to see some of you going undercover on your brand. But that's where we're going to start is Alana, I saw that article. Many of you may have seen that as well, but why are we going undercover to find this?
Wonderful question, Matt. Absolutely. Like at the end of the year, the start of the year, as people are putting together new ideas, I often hear people say, oh, that lead gen strategy, it didn't work for me. I'm trading that in and I'm trying something brand new. And I often say, well, it's typically a company that I've heard success stories from other advisors, or it's a strategy that we've been doing for years and years, and all of a sudden this individual doesn't find it to be effective. So my recommendation to those of you that say the same thing, as well as any other advisor, before you make any significant changes, whether it is transitioning from one strategy to the other, or bringing in something new, or even spending more money to get your name out there, make sure what you're promoting is what you want people to hear. I know that seems like it's common sense, but you only control so much out. And even in your control, advisors often don't take the time to see what it says, right? And so going into the year, I think it's a great time to go undercover. I say go undercover to get ahead and really experience your brand the way that a prospective client would. So that's really what the premise is about.
Yeah. And I think that's especially helpful too. And I don't know if you're seeing this with the advisors you're working with, but a lot in our network that when we say you got to analyze the past and look at what, like you said, what have you done in the past? What has worked? What has not worked? It is a struggle sometimes to get the numbers. They've been so focused on, hey, I held an event, I had this many meetings it came from or whatever, but they didn't necessarily know the results or didn't track the ROI related to those events. And while that's ideal that they have that, it isn't a deal breaker to moving forward. Like you have to start somewhere. And so building that scorecard and knowing your numbers is so important. But I think that's why this process and what you and your team do is so important, because even if you don't have those numbers, you can still go undercover to find out what messaging is there and what they're going to do that's going to work and not work in terms of their lead gen and brand messaging moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that's almost even step 2 that did take action. And as you know, as a marketer, right? Like,
Yeah.
you only know a portion of the people that had exposure to you, your message, your ad, whatever. And only a few of them move forward in the process with you. So think about the big piece of the pie, like the other 80% that did not, right? And then I think once you're very confident in, your brand, your message, everything aligns, it's setting the tone that you want it to be set. Then when you start getting people in from like the lead gen, then you can start tweaking things because you know that part of your business, it's in order. It's how you want it to be, right? Now let's talk about like the steps in the whole buyer journey and whatnot. But does that make sense?
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
it does. And I guess even backing up into that, we know it's not perfect. That's why you want to do this so often.
Yeah.
Like what are the common mistakes that you see financial professionals are making in relation to their brand identity?
Okay. So here's some big ones. And it's nobody's fault. Like, we're all busy, right? Like,
Yeah.
everybody's running businesses or departments, their book of business, whatever, right? And if something's worked for a period of time, we don't stop to think to go back to revisit it. But here's what happens. Okay, so first, organizations, you're acquiring different marketing pieces throughout the course of your years in business. So you may have a brochure from this organization, this one sheet from this organization. You use it during the sales process. When you look at them collectively, the messages don't align. One might be selling an investment, the other one saying investments are terrible, you should only work with insurance products, right? Like, one's talking about fiduciary, the other one's selling a product. Like, it just does not make sense. And so if you're on the receiving end and you're looking through this stuff, it's like the old things that make us go, like, you'll stop and pause.
Right.
And like, why is the same person giving me 2 mixed messages? What aren't they telling me? Like, it makes you almost want to dig deeper. So I think just assessing the materials that you've been using from, online, just your digital brochure, all the way through the sales process, seeing where they've come from, and just make sure there's no conflicting messaging. I think that's a big one.
Do you think, and I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt, but I think something I've noticed is, do you think a lot of that has to do with their financial advisors? They're good at, we're good at what we do in a certain area of that. A lot of the marketing, collateral, brand messaging that may have come from different resources. It might be something they've put together. Maybe they've hired an agency. Maybe they've used outside vendors or things like that. Like some of our partners here, like a Snappy Kraken or FMG Suite. So it like you said, it's not their fault, but maybe when you lay all that down of what is the prospect see when they're going through this, and yeah, that messaging isn't the same because it's actually from 3 or 4, even more different vendors
over different times in history.
Yeah.
So some of it might be dated. That was kind of leading into the next, and I'll kind of cover that a bit more, but like, your prospects have changed and their interests have changed and what they want. And I think, like, to over illustrate an example, like when I first started AdvisorPR almost 20 years ago, they weren't boomers, they were seniors, right? Like, their interests in retirement were much different than like boomers and lifestyle. So not updating the language to meet the needs of your ideal clients, it's kind of built into that, right? But like,
yeah,
if it's been around for a long time, it's time to take a look at it. And if what you're saying, if you're an advisor and you read numbers and not words, get somebody on your team. Hi, I just want to make sure that all these materials we use, I'll say the same thing. Ask your spouse, or, there's other people that are consumers, right? And help you, give it an objective overview.
And, another thing, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a mistake, but maybe a missed opportunity is a lot that's changed in this industry just in the last year with the new SEC marketing rule, being able to work testimonials and case studies into their messaging, because who's better to help tell your story than those that are already working with you and love working with you and are loyal enough to provide the testimonial or case study to you. So having a bank of those and I'll plug the quick caveat of making sure that you work with your compliance team on
Right.
collecting and using those appropriately. But I think that's a big part moving forward, in terms of whether they're doing this themselves or working with a group like yours, of finding a way to work those case studies and testimonials into their messaging as well.
So that's a huge point. And I would definitely say that is a missed opportunity. That is a gap that could be filled, but it's really part of a kind of a larger, I guess, transition we've made in the world of marketing, this user generated content. So if you're not taking a moment to go undercover, right, and experience your brand like a prospective client would, you may not see reviews that are out there about you on third party. You might not have all fans, but you don't know until you take a moment, right, to go and Google your name, Google your company name, see where you show up so you can identify what are missed opportunities and what are some serious issues that we need to address, so they aren't distracting from the brand and taking people away, right? But rather singing your praises.
Yeah.
So.
And I know you and I have talked about that in the past before on calls, that I know both of us have worked into workshops or seminars that we've done when we're talking to advisors of, hey, what's the first thing that a prospect is going to do when they hear about you? Or even if it's a referral that from someone that they know that's working with you, the first thing they're going to do is they're either going to go to your website or they're going to Google you.
Yeah.
And so you have to try and control that messaging as much as you can. And even though everyone might know that already, it's shocking how many people don't do that.
Yeah. You just assume that you're a good person and they're going to feel it somehow, the energy from you that you're a good. No, it doesn't work like that. All of us go to the web. Like that's our first thing, right? Like at this point, I don't even want to buy anything new in Target. I'd rather go and look it up on Amazon, it's cheap, whatever. Like it's just more convenient to start there. And, owned content, right? Your website, your blog, that's just a part of it, like there's, we talk about like this user generated content. So what else are people saying about you? There's earned content. So are you showing up credible? Do you have an authority, a voice within the industry? Right. And then there's like the paid, like what are you advertising? So, looking at that from a collective whole brand experience is critical. But one step further, if somebody is in the market for financial advice, they're not just going to one source. They're likely looking up you and a couple of your closest competitors. So understanding, vertically, like how your business aligns across these different pieces that are out there about you, but then also across, different competitors that are similar in service, from you as an advisor. How do you rank to them? Right? Are they more credible? Yeah. Do they have better reviews? Do they have worse reviews? Do they have more content, less content? Do they do video? Do they do social media? Like, where are their gaps or opportunities, in your business that you could really promote?
Yeah. And so we can and probably will do a whole other podcast on a lot that they can do, that advisors or their offices can do, on that, the predominantly digital side in terms of the website and social and the Google My Business profiles and the importance of all of those, like you're saying. But I think the point of your article and the point we're sharing today is you have to do the assessment and the analysis before you even get there to creating the new stuff and going undercover to evaluate all of that of what's already there.
Yeah, I think just to boil it down, know who you want to be, and then just make sure that that's what's out there. Yeah. If you want to be seen as a caring, nurturing advisor, I mean, again, to like over dramatize like the
and hopefully everyone has the self-awareness to know what kind of advisor you are.
And like, so that's probably going back to like the beginning, like what mistakes do advisors make? Like, know how you want to show up, and then just be sure that's what it says. Is really what it boils down to. I see like this is another big mistake, I think, of advisors.
Yeah.
You have the ability to make private profiles and social private, Okay.
Mhm.
So if you are doing things that don't align with what your business objective is and the types of people you work with, don't put that out for the world to see. And then also remember that you're in business to fulfill their needs, not promote your own. So just because pink is your favorite color doesn't mean your website should be all pink.
Right.
To rock climbing, like that is not the right activity to associate with a retirement planning firm, right? So don't make your website all about pictures of, these extreme sports, So that's enough. Like, I think advisors sometimes want to decorate it like it's their house and it's for them, but it's the absolute opposite. It's for the people you want to work with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's got to fit your niche. So how often should they be doing these assessments, like going undercover, and what exactly should they be looking for when they're doing that?
Well, I think it's set intervals, like one time a year. I feel like that's sufficient. Things can pop up throughout the year after you get through the first one. So this time of year, like over the holiday break, I think that's a great time to do it. It's a little bit of downtime in terms of clients, unless you're really into like end of year taxes. So I think just identifying when you have a little bit more flexibility to, move forward with that. I think that makes sense. Or if you start hearing from people, either they're canceling after like 3 appointments with you and they're not giving you explanation, or I think that's a good time. Like, okay, what's going on? Like 1 may be fine, that's on them. But if you're seeing it 2, 3 times, then is there a greater issue that's going on? And then another time would be, of course, if you have any sort of transition within your business. So M&A, like if you partner with somebody or you rebrand or you expand an office or you update a logo, like, yes, then you're going to need to assess and make sure that everything's updated and it's current. So that's another good time to do it as well. And then what are you looking for? So I guess fundamentally, like your brand is made up of 3 things, right? So it's your visual identity. How do you look? You've got your icon, you've got your colors, your fonts. A professional business is consistent with all of those elements on the visual side, right? So you just want to be sure you're consistent, you're professional, you're consistent. What do you say, right? So your brand messaging, from your core messages to your tagline, they need to speak to your ideal client and they need to really help you stand apart. You don't want to be, I can do that too, but rather I am the best person to serve A, B, and C, right?
You don't want to just say, I'm a fiduciary.
I'm a fiduciary, right? Me too. And then the third is the brand experience. And so all the time, most of the time, you ask it 5 things that make you unique. They always say customer service, we care, right? And then you go through the brand experience. So this is lead generation, from lead to prospect through the whole buyer journey to becoming clients and ongoing communications. Are you customer service driven at every single step of that whole client life cycle, right? Are things efficient? Is it client friendly? So just experiencing it that way. Those 3 things together is collectively what makes up your brand, right?
I love that. And I'm not sure this isn't just, financial advisors and offices. I think this is in a lot of industries. They don't think of those as a collective. I think the most common one is obviously the visual, like you think a logo, obviously the name, things like that. But layering on the messaging and then obviously the whole experience. I think that's the part that's not looked at, but as a whole, and like you said, getting specific on that of not just saying customer service or the people, but like what truly makes you unique. And it could be your process, your offerings, whatever, but packaging.
Not products. It's not products. It's not, I'm a fiduciary. It's the services, it's the experience. So like the planning process, to your point, that is you. If you have a branded sales process, my goodness, like that already puts you a level above, right? Like that's a unique experience that's part of your brand. So,
and we've, those that know, I'm also with the JL Smith team over with Jason's retail practice there. And we've gone through EOS previously. So we talk about, what are our brand differentiators there? And obviously we talk about the bucket plan, our tax, not just the tax practice, but kind of the tax trilogy, tying together preparation, planning, and management on the tax side. And then that we're an ensemble practice, pulling together those resources to help our families there. That was communicated us through our EOS facilitator about others in our region, in our target market, might have one of those. They maybe even have two, but like that combination of three is what makes us unique. And so kind of to what you're saying, when you can package all three of those within the messaging and the experience, that's what's going to truly set us apart in our markets.
Mm-hmm. And then being consistent,
Mhm.
right? Like you don't just say one thing over here. This is funny because so many people in this industry, advisors specifically, are the quick starts, right? New idea, squirrel, like
I don't know any advisors like that.
no, right? But like, I'm going to do this and I want to do that. And almost from scratch. Like there may be some brand equity in your company name if you've been around for a long time, but if you're shifting messages to fit the platform or the opportunity, like that's fractured. Like it's not repetitive. It's called branding. Use the same thing in the different places where you show up.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite. I always say this, and saying this since I started. If you stick to your messages will stick. So don't try to change them just because you feel like doing something different today, right? That's a brand.
We can probably end this now. We just got our soundbite we needed right there. I mean, you nailed it. Next, we got to lead with that next time. No, but I like that because it gets into, I've heard this before. I'd love to give credit. I don't know where I heard it, but it's don't try and be all things to all people. Know your market and know your message. And that's why I love that you said consistency.
Yeah.
That's what's really going to nail it.
Yep. Consistency. And well, that can go right into the 4 C's if you want to talk through those from the article.
Yeah. And so we talk about the importance of the consistency. What about tying in the rest, like the image and the credibility? What that side of it as well?
Sure. Now, when we talk about the lead to prospect to client journey and the whole, the lifetime of the client, the brand and the experience and all that is going to stay consistent throughout every interaction. But there's 2 other areas that I would encourage advisors to focus in on, that no matter where somebody is in their, in working with you, it will still have relevance. So the other is really the image, right? So you might have the best brand out there, but if you're the only person talking about your brand and, sharing your message, is it authentic? Is it credible? So looking for those earned opportunities for somebody else to validate, to your point, Matt, earlier, the testimony, a big opportunity, right? To give social proof, if you will. I've always been a big proponent, earned media. Not everybody qualifies to get that. And it's, trusted media outlets, they cover financial topics. They don't work with somebody that they wouldn't consider to be an expert, right? So having a Wall Street Journal or a Barron's or USA Today or whatnot vet you in a sense and say, yes, you are an expert on rollovers or tax management or whatever it may be. That really helps you show up. It enhances your brand. And then, of course, the digital footprint. So as we were talking, that's the first place we start is online, right? So
yeah,
Google your name every once in a while and see what shows up, right? So that would be the things that I would say, the big picture, focus on those, because you could be a COI, you could be a client looking to refer, you could be somebody that's just heard your name for the first time. Those are the things that they're looking at.
Got it. And, before we move on to the next topic, we've talked about what they, and by they, it could be, you as an advisor listening, your marketing person, your agency you're using. Does it make a big difference, or is there an importance to whether they are doing it themselves or whether they kind of use an outside consultant, like someone that has an impartial view, or does it not matter as long as they know exactly what they're looking for?
I think that depends upon the advisor and their level of comfort with branding.
Okay.
It's abstract, and they could go and run algorithms for portfolios, words I don't even know how to say, right? But they don't feel comfortable with making sure that these are aligned or saying the same thing. So that's one. If you have had success, like if you're attracting the right type of clients some of the time and they're connecting with your messaging, you're probably on the right track. If you're getting more no's than yes, or you're losing prospects to competitors, you might want to bring somebody else in, and get an assessment and recommendations on how to clean that up. You can't afford not to, right? If you're losing because of it.
Yeah. For all the reasons you've established already. Yeah. It's too important not to.
Right. And then I think, it's a maintenance program a bit. Like once you have it clearly identified, you want to maintain it. And then thereafter, it could be somebody internally supporting you on doing that, looking at your digital footprint on an annual basis, et cetera. But yeah, up to the time, let's talk.
Message received. So the other thing, and obviously the important part that your article talked about, was the 4 C's of brand consideration. Can you outline for us what the 4 C's are and what our listeners need to know?
Yes. With everything I share with advisors, I do try to simplify it. I know talking about this again, it may sound more abstract. It doesn't need to be, right? So just bringing it down.
All about simplification.
I try. So what are you looking for? All right. You want to make sure that it's cohesive, right? That you're saying the same thing in all the different places, that, you look and you sound like the professional you want to be. So this could be is your contact information consistent? Are you telling them to call one number over here and another number over there? Just little things like that, make a big difference. So basically all of your brand messaging and the visual identity, they're all polished, they're all aligned. They are, making the right impression. So that's one. Number 2, is it compelling? So we talked a bit about this before. Does it showcase your interests, right? And your goals? So does it connect with your ideal clients? Does it, tell them who you work with, how you can help, the problems that you can solve, right? Or does it read like a technical manual? It needs to be compelling. It needs to connect with them.
Right.
Again, if you stick with your message will stick. But if you tell them what you want them to know, chances are that's what they'll remember, along the same lines. So that's going to give them the content that they need to be able to absorb it, and maybe even tell their friends. You never know.
Right.
Number 3, is it credible? So just talking about having third party, you can say you're the best person on the face of this planet, but if nobody else is saying it, how credible is that message? So looking for, third party, whether it's awards, those are big, you have been recognized for something amazing you've done, earned media. Yes, you are an expert. The testimonials from clients, yes, the experience was valuable to me in a compliant, friendly way, whatever. But right, you just want to show up credibly. And then the consistent. So just going back, people think that they're being boring because they're saying the same thing over and over again. So they try to switch it up. And that's the last thing you want to do when it relates to branding. You want to just be consistent across all the different areas. So those are my 4 C's to give yourself an objective brand assessment. And then I always tell advisors, do incognito mode. If you're going to go and do this search on yourself, don't use your cookies and your search history in a Google. Just go incognito. It's not perfect, but it helps, and you can get a real assessment of yourself. And then, like I said, pick 1 or 2 of your competitors and then do the same thing for them and see how they show up. So you can do yourself the favor before you start spending a ton of money to drive leads, but you have no strong message to get people to take action, or you switch things up. Just make sure these things are out there working for you, not against you.
Yeah. And I like that you end on the consistency too, and how you described it as well. Is we all, and you and I are in marketing, my team, you want to be consistent with your messaging, it's very easy to fall into the trap of like, well, I'm saying the same thing over and over. It's getting kind of boring. We should say it differently. No, that's a good, like, it sounds familiar to you, but you never, from the outside looking in, you want that familiar. You want them to hear certain keywords or phrases and think of your business.
Yeah.
And so it's too easy to fall into that trap, but you know, it's a great reminder.
Lawyers, I think, are phenomenal at this. I mean, if you gave me a tagline for the 10 biggest attorneys in Vegas, I could tell you exactly which attorney that was. You know, so like that's what it is. Like you need that the repetition is what's going to start to sink in people's minds, and it's never the first time they hear about you that they take actions. Rarely, unless it's like from a trusted source. It's typically multiple times, right? And that combined with the need is what needs to happen for them to move forward. So,
yeah. And, you know, for those, you mentioned going incognito, you know, for those listening, if you weren't sure, like you can go in incognito mode on your web browser so that it erases all that, the cookies and all that, and you're getting that objective view of your business. Also, if you or your marketing agency or whatever have web softwares that can do analysis on social media, on websites, things like that, you can actually go in there and plug competitors into those. So you can not only get your own keywords and assessment on your social media, your website, but you can do that on your competitors as well. So if you're working with an agency, you know, make sure that you're requesting that, to Alana's point of do as much of that research up front as you can. So, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, but make sure your competitors are legit. You know, in Bank of America or Morgan Stanley, you guys are not competitors. You may be alternatives to each other, right? Your competitor is similar in size, similar licenses, they serve the same market. You know, that is really what you want to go deep on. You're never, ever going to be able to outbuy.
That's a great point. It came back to what we said earlier of like, you know, being realistic and having self-awareness, like who are we in our market? You know, who are we as a company or as an individual? So yeah, because if you're not doing that and you're judging yourself against those, you're just doing yourself a disservice.
And then you become a generalist without even trying, because you're trying to keep up with a bank. Sorry,
right.
That's not you. That's not what makes you special and different. You know.
Yeah. So, you know, and part of the reason that you wrote this, and obviously sharing with our audience, like what steps should be taking if a brand falls short in one of these 4 C's?
Well, you sort of touched on some of it earlier. Like it's identifying where are your gaps, right? So where is there opportunity that you aren't currently taking part in? Where are there inconsistencies? Where are there inaccuracies? And like, what's damaging your business? And then prioritize them. Like, okay, this is serious. Like, this is how, you know, making people not work with me. Okay, then we need to fix that. A lot of times it's not so much that it's your own content that you're putting out. It's typically other people, like what they're saying or not saying is where advisors see the biggest gaps. So certainly do recommend having a third party. However, you feel comfortable with it, but like getting other people to agree that you are the best person for, you know, what you say that you're really good at. I think that's a big gap that a lot of advisors experience.
Well, especially if they don't know, you know, if this is the first time they've ever done this, and now they see they have a few negative or bad reviews on a Google, and they, you know, they don't know what to do next. Like they have to come to someone like, you know, yourself. How do we fix this? How do we rectify this?
And that can't be the only thing that people find out online other than your own website.
Yeah.
You know, because that's going to make people cause for pause. So there's that. And then I think it's a little eye-opening when people do look at their competitors more objectively. So it's not just, you know, I don't like this street is on the Barron's list, or he's written a book, or, you know, whatever it may, he has a YouTube channel. Like it gives you the tactical things that people are looking at when they're comparing, right?
Mhm.
And what is maybe getting them to go the other direction, or vice versa. You might see that you are at the top of your game and you don't need to change anything, just continue what you're doing. But it's like that validation, like, yes, go invest in more lead generation strategies because you're solid, like move forward.
Right. Yeah, double down on what's working.
Yeah.
Take that positive testimonial you found on Facebook and start using that in your other marketing and PR.
There you go. With confidence, that it's going to work for you. So,
yeah. So I guess we'll kind of, as we're getting towards the end, tie this back of like, why do this? Like, how does a strong brand influence other marketing efforts?
So a strong brand it's like the magnet, like it's going to attract people to you. So yes, you can go out with lead generation. You can drive them to the company. Maybe right now is the right time for them to move forward. But even if not, like perhaps you've been able to bring them into your network on some platform or whatnot, and you can continue to communicate with them going forward, right? A brand, like it's like build a house on sand or build a house on rock. Like if you don't have a brand, like any change, like any stormy weather, anything, like there's nothing to build from, after whatever, the smallest little thing. But if you're like, you've got a solid foundation, a change happens, markets, whatever, like you have a place that's solid, people know who you are, and you can keep building that momentum. And I have like a bazillion analogies, like a snowball, right? Like,
I was going to say, I feel like we could just start naming analogies here. The base of the pyramid, the snowball.
There you go. Anyways, it's important. Just there you go. That's what you need to know.
Yeah. I mean, just like as individuals, kind of like your last name, like that carries reputation with it that, that's your company. Like you may be the lead advisor, but there's going to be others that follow you. And that hopefully as you're growing that are going to continue that brand on.
Yeah. A good reputation is critical, especially, those that have been in business for a while. I still get referrals from people I worked with 15 years ago. And it's like, it's incredible. And I appreciate that. But it's, having a brand, communicating, you stay in, people's permanent mental Rolodex. That's what you're looking for. So.
Yeah. So if they do want to go this route and they've never done it before or don't know where they're starting, I presume, you can share how your team, what services you provide, or you and your team at AdvisorPR. Can you talk a little bit about how that works with your team providing this?
Sure. I will share with you, Matt, we were talking about putting it inside the notes. I do have a white paper, kind of more of like a little guide on everything that we've talked about. We can put a link up to the article too.
We'll make sure that we get that in the notes for all of you, whether you're listening or watching along today.
Yeah. So AdvisorPR, we support advisors in 4 different areas: brand development and consulting, high impact custom marketing, so support materials, like what do you need to help tell your story. 3 is the promotion component, mostly the PR. So we talked about the authority, the credibility. My team works to get advisors interviewed with local and national media on the topics that they specialize in. So if you've identified that that's a gap, that's an area that we can bring a lot of success, to a lot of impact to the advisors. And then the 4th area is capture. So just kind of that ongoing communications. As it relates to this specifically, we have like a process we can take people through. Like it's reviewing it like a financial plan. Everything is parallel, right? But it's like, what's working, what's not, and here's the top recommendations for improvement. Very similar probably to what an advisor would do with a client. So yeah, we can help in those different areas. But I'll put more information. I'll give it to you to share.
Yeah, we'll make sure that is linked up for everyone. And I know anyone that's part of our marketing roundtables here at C2P or been on other podcasts knows, that not only do you and I go way back in my time here, but that we at C2P also utilize you and the AdvisorPR team have been a tremendous asset to us on actually probably all 4 of those things that you've mentioned. So you can put our stamp of approval on that.
Thank you. Thank you. I would just say, if you want to connect, you can always find me on LinkedIn, Alana Kohl.
They can go Google you. See,
Google me or advisorpr.com, and you can learn a little bit more about our company. So
no, that was great. This was very helpful, great information for our audience today. And I think even as we went through today, Alana, we identified 2 or 3 other topics that we can make sure that we turn this into a little mini series on the PR side.
It's the Matt and Alana show.
That's right. More to come. So thank you again, Alana. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you all for listening.
Thanks for tuning in. This podcast was brought to you by C2P, an organization whose purpose is to educate, train, grow, and support holistic financial advisors so families can achieve true prosperity. Never miss an episode by subscribing now to discover new resources and strategies. Visit C2PEnterprises.com to learn how we can help scale and secure your business.
At the time of delivery and any subsequent publishing, information was deemed reliable but is subject to change by the time of listening or viewing. The contents of this piece include the opinions and projections of C2P Enterprises, are subject to change, and are for informational purposes only. The information provided in this presentation is not intended to be individual investment, tax, or legal advice.